I've got a few announcements. First of all, today and tomorrow, from 10:30, you can relax with Martin Otevřel, certified master. Sign-up sheet is in front of the massage room at A211. Food trucks will arrive at 2 p.m. if you wish. And the sign-up for lightning talk is available in the section in front of D105. And the next session is by CRUD, a bad idea, focused on the real scenarios, presented by Petr Heinz.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm here to tell you why I think CRUD is a bad idea and why you should focus on real scenarios in design of your APIs, etc. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Petr Heinz. I work at Shopsys in Ostrava. I have more than 8 years experience in programming in PHP. I have a couple of code snippets, so if the PHP is not your language of choice, please bear with me. I think the concepts are really translatable. Last year I dedicated to developing Shopsys framework, which is an e-commerce platform that we will release as open source. So let's take a look at CRUD. First, just as a small exercise, please show of hand how many of you are developers here. Great, almost everybody. How many of you know what CRUD is? Great, almost everybody. And how many of you think it's the best thing ever? Well, that's a bit disappointing. Okay, let's look at CRUD really fast. As you know, it stands for the 4 methods of persistent storage: create, read, update, and delete. It can be easily mapped to SQL statements, insert, select, update, delete, and to HTTP methods, put, get, post, delete. This simple mapping is one way in which CRUD is really easy, really simple, and really nice. Let's look at a code example. So here we have a really basic entity article that has 4 properties. It has some author, some text, some state, and the date time in which it was published. To really control this, you have all the getters and setters, and here is some article controller with the methods create, update, and delete. And here in the update, you just get some variables in the request. You set it into your entity, and you've updated it. Cool, right? But the bad thing is that entities must very often follow some business rules. So, for example, a product that has no items on stock must be hidden, or an article that is published must have a published date. This is kind of hard in this example because the article has all the setters public, so a developer is not restricted in any way, and he can, for example, set state as published, but forgot to set the date of the publishment. So that's kind of hard to do. But of course, we can move the CRUD methods into the entity itself. So we can construct it. This is the create method. This is the update method. This is the delete method. And because it is really low level in the entity, the data consistency will never be broken. We can look at the update, and you can see that you cannot edit for example, deleted articles, and here the date of publishing is always set if it's in the state published, and if it's in the state unpublished, it's null. So you can really keep your data consistent. But this approach isn't really ideal either. To fully explain that, allow me a quick detour really to basic concepts. What is an object anyway? Because objects have both data and behavior. Data is, of course, in the properties. Behavior is in the public methods. Objects model real-world behavior, real-world concepts and relationships. One of the most important principles in the object-oriented programming is encapsulation principle, which says that the object should have the inner data really private, never to show to other objects how it keeps the data, and the only way in which it can interact with the world is through the public methods. In the object-oriented world, it's the tell, don't ask principle. Just tell objects what to do. Don't ask them for data. Don't don't ask them for data, and just tell them what to do. For example, this is a simple bank account object. It has no getters, no setters. You can do two things with it. You can deposit some money, you can withdraw some money. You can see that you can never access the balance directly. You can just use these two methods. In PHP, you can combine procedural style and object-oriented style of programming, which is both good and bad. It's good because we have more options. It's bad because, well, we have more options. We need to think. It's always bad. This gets me to the Anemic or rich domain model. Do you know these terms? Are you familiar with them? Oh, cool. Let's define some basic terms first. What is the domain? The dictionary definition is a sphere of knowledge or activity. But it's basically what your program is about. If you're in e-commerce, your domain is just e-commerce. The domain model is then some abstraction to model the things that you are talking about or you are solving. Domain object is then part of this model, and business logic is the high-level logic your project tries to encompass, tries to solve. So Anemic domain model, it has no business logic in domain objects. It has all the logic in some service layer beside the domain objects. It clearly separates data and the processes in which it violates object encapsulation. It works really well for simple applications. So if you're doing just something really small and simple, it might be the way to go. And it was called an anti-pattern by Martin Fowler. On the other hand, we have rich domain model with the, business logic mainly in domain objects. This really keeps the data integrity. It follows the object encapsulation. And this means it has really thin or non-existent service layer. It might be a better choice for complex applications because of this object encapsulation. We can see here a little example in code. On the left, we have Anemic worker. which has just some velocity, which is just a quantification of the speed of his work. And you can get it, and you can set it. Just a simple dump object. And then you have a worker service, which is the class with all the logic around worker. You have a function work, so you can say that a worker should work on a task for some time. This means that we can calculate some progress and set this progress to a task. You can see that this is really in a procedural programming style, because you just get the data, then make some decisions, and then set the data back. On the other hand, with the rich domain model, you have just the class worker. You don't need any service classes. You just construct the worker with some velocity, and he keeps it during his existence. And it has function work. You just provide task and time. So you might say that the interface is simpler because it has fewer arguments. And it just tells the task to make progress. So it's really object-oriented. The only thing that is public and can interact with the world is the public method work. No data. The problem basically lies in setters, because setters do actually not exist in the real world. It's a concept that is purely in the domain of programming, not in the real world. You never set something to some object. I mean, when I work well, my boss doesn't come to me and set my salary to a higher value. He just raises my salary, right? It really has no link in the real world. Expressive statements lead to more readable code. More readable code leads to more reliable code with fewer bugs. When you use words like set something, it's not really much expressive, because it has no real meaning. Nobody expects the setters to do stuff except setting the value. It might seem obvious, but when you need to link some special action to setting the value, you might put the logic into setter, and that's not really obvious to others. I can really show it with the order object, for example. We have here a public function setStatus that does more things than just setting status. It's validating it, and if the status is equal to paid, it will send an email, which is really not obvious. But if you have two public functions, pay and cancel, they are more expressive, because you just call order pay. It obviously changes status, and it might send an email or do some other actions. The U in CRUD, the update, is basically similar to a setter, because it doesn't exist. Nothing is really updated. Article may be rewritten, it may be published, it may be cancelled, deleted, but never really updated. It's too general to have some deep meaning, to be expressive. Let me finish it with some recommendations and conclusion. Focus on real scenarios. If you base your API around some expressive actions that have real-world meaning, you can have the API that is more intuitive, more easy to use, has fewer bugs, it's more expectable. Think about the way you program, because there is never a silver bullet, a solution to all problems. It's never like rich domain model is better than Anemic because it encapsulates objects. You have to really know about both extremes and then choose the right choice for your project. If you really need CRUD methods, for example, for integration with some other service, you can use it as an adapter. This is the article with an update we saw earlier. Sorry. And with an adapter pattern, you can change it to have the same functionality, but use an article which has meaningful methods inside. So you can just have a layer that maps the CRUD methods to the internal API, which is modeled in a rich domain model. It's about finding the balance of finding the solution that is really great for your project. That's why we have in Shopsy framework we have several getters, setters, etc. But we are trying to find inspiration in the rich domain model and what it can do for us. If you want, you can check out the source code. We are currently in closed beta, so there is some filling of forms involved, but you can check it out. Thanks for listening. If you want the slides, you can see them at bit.ly/devconfcz-crud. And I'll be glad if you have any questions or if you fill the feedback form at shed.com. Thank you. Are there any questions?
So, in case of an MVC application, how does the rich domain model fit in to the whole product or the whole system?
How does the rich domain model fit into MVC architecture, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It fits into the M of the MVC, into the model, and then in presenter you can, for example, take some other classes like DTOs, data transfer objects, or you can simplify it by publishing some part of the data and not using the full rich domain model.
So
But
so for example, in case of an active model based MVC application, you bake in to the actual model objects the business logic. How it should be implemented.
well, you can implement it. Well, I think you can implement it just in model or in the business objects. You can just.
Yeah,
What is the problem here?
well, it can grow very big. So
It can grow quite big, but then it's just the question of separation of concerns. Just making your object smaller, having just one responsibility. Any more questions? Yeah?
How do you manage transactions in the database when you are using rich model and there are more than one object involved?
Yeah, how do I use transactions when there are more business objects, right?
Yeah.
Well, basically we use transactions on the level of request. We just wrap the whole request into a transaction by some listeners. So the transactions are out of the question, because everything that happens in a request is in one transaction.
In the beginning, you said you're a Symfony developer.
Yes.
So I have some Symfony-related question. I guess you're using this rich domain model also in Symfony applications. And I want to ask how you manage to apply dependency injection when you have, for example, rich entities.
How do I use dependency injection?
Is that entity actually also in service, or?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Basically, you can instead of dependency injection, instead of having all the services in the object that needs to do the work, you can pass them in arguments of the method. So when I have the code with the setter that with the order, yeah, here, this mail service, it really doesn't have to be inside a property. You can just call it pay and mail service. So you provide it in an argument. That also can work and can overcome some issues with the dependency injection.
Yeah, so is it like you have let's say pre-configured service in your container, and then you just get it from the container and pass it as an argument manually, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
If that's all questions. Yeah.
As I understood, they're really good at OP, object-oriented programming. Which one book, can you tell which one book can
Recommend?
object-oriented programming? We should read.
So the question is if I could recommend some book on object-oriented programming.
Yes.
Well, I would definitely start at patterns. I mean, the book is called Petr. I'm not really sure how it's called.
Object-oriented programming patterns.
No. It's something patterns in PHP. I would definitely go into some lists of design patterns and try to read about them, because they are oftentimes very useful. But I have no one book I could recommend. Sorry.
Okay. You said that CRUD in REST interfaces means get, post, put, and delete.
Yeah.
Basically, if you have now the meaningful endpoints, how do you decide if it's a post or if it's a put? Does put even stays in the question, or do you always use post? And how do you distinguish between the two?
How do I distinguish between HTTP methods?
That are meaningful for the REST interface.
Well, I've pretty struggled with that myself, but in the end, I decided to use get for everything that can be cached and post for everything that can't. So I just avoided the the question altogether.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
if you wish, please leave your feedback for this session in skill.org. I would like to tell you that Mensa is already closed and there are available food trucks in the backyard. And you can sign up for lightning talks in the pavilion. Thanks.